Hey guys, I got a sick video about salt I just found. It's called Why Salt is the Most Important Ingredient in History by Delish Story. Let's watch together. I'll give a few pointers and I'll tell you guys about salt. Let's go.
Sodium chloride, or salt as it's more commonly known, is essential to life. The simple ionic compound is necessary for nerve and muscle function, helps regulate fluids in the body, and plays a critical role in controlling blood pressure.
All true. Also, I really want to give a nuance to this. It's sodium and chloride. That's what we call salt. Some people think when we talk about salt, it's some kind of rock salt. Well, it's literally just two ions, sodium and chloride. Also, if you are referring to something as rock salt, you're you're saying there's also almost some kind of sediment in it, which would be like sand or a small bit of rock, and that would just not even be absorbed by the body. The body has no problem just excreting these small little uh, particles of nature. It's like having a little bit, eating a little bit of dirt. Like that's not gonna affect you at all. So it kind of makes no sense. Well, salt in the ocean is usually derived from rocks uh, and previous stuff that was actually on land. It's not really rock salt. In the end, it is the sodium and the chloride.
Not having enough salt can cause dehydration, low blood pressure, and even death. Because
Yep. You can also die from salt if you overdose, but what we're really seeing these days is the dehydration that's caused by a poor diet, not consuming enough salt, and exercising a lot, and just moving and uh, being poisoned by your environment and not getting enough sodium to really keep up with the healing process.
of salt's critical importance, it has been pivotal to human civilization. The humble mineral has been used for millennia in a multitude of ways, from food preservation to religious practices, and became so valuable it carved roads that we still use today. At one point, it was even worth its weight in gold. This is a history.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later, but it's really like it used to be. The word celery comes from salt. It was so valuable, everyone desired it, and it was almost necessary for life. Like they harvested it and really incorporate it in their lives because it was just so valuable at hydrating people and that making their food tastier and being able to preserve the food.
You shouldn't take with a grain of salt. Let's start in the Paleolithic era. Humans were still nomadic hunter-gatherers. They'd follow animals to naturally occurring salt deposits, also known as salt licks. Those hunting trails became roads, and people made settlements along those roads.
Yeah, it's actually a good point to point out. People often talk about we hunting animals. We're probably much more like trappers who fought with spears to catch these animals. I think it's a really good point is we were looking for these high traffic areas of animals so we could set up these traps and so we could hunt them efficiently. Like when like predators go hunt near water because like a lot of animals need to drink water to survive. So let's say you're in the desert, hanging out near the oasis is going to be very productive. And for humans, one of these places was the salt licks. Animals, especially herbivores, they need some extra salt, and thus we were often setting up traps, setting up camp close to these salt licks to capture these animals.
Now, these early hunter-gatherer societies got all the salt they needed from the meat that they hunted. But around 12,000 years ago, during what's
Really good point. You can be totally fine without salt if you consume enough animal products. At least you would have been fine back in the day. But as they're going to elaborate, nowadays there's a lot more stressors, more pollutants, more more things in your environment that's gonna dehydrate you. And unless if you look at how people are in the tropics or on islands, they have coconut water. They have some kind of hydration that has minerals in it. And not every environment nowadays in our world has that, and our soils are getting depleted. And because of that, it's good to supplement the salt. Well, they're going to talk about how we change our diets now and how people actually just need to had to supplement sodium, had to supplement salt because they switched away from these animal products, which means they were lacking this salt.
called the Neolithic Revolution, hunter-gatherers transitioned to agriculture. The shift away from salt-rich game to more cereal and plant-based foods created a dietary need for added salt.
Exactly.
There are two main sources of salt. The first is evaporated seawater, which leaves behind sea salt crystals. This includes fleur de sel from the coast of Brittany in France, and Maldon, which is hand-harvested in the little English village of the same name. The second is mineral howlite, also known as rock salt. This can be found deep underground in ancient seabeds that have dried up and crystallized over millennia. Sometimes those ancient deposits are pushed up through the planet's crust, creating salt domes or even mountain ranges like the Salt Range in Pakistan's Punjab region, where Himalayan salt comes from. Though the Earth is abundant with salt, production in the ancient world was limited to those who lived near seawater, had the resources to mine for deposits deep underground, or seized geopolitical control of those sources.
Yeah, people would actually it was a resource, just like people mine gold, people mine iron, people mine oil. It's a privilege to have access and be able to harvest the seawater, and many would strive for that. She was also talking about Himalayan sea salts. Himalayan sea salt is actually one of the salts Darko and therefore I do not recommend. It's usually mined deeper in the ground and not harvested from the sea. Also, there's certain radioactive elements and unwanted, undesirable traits that salt has, and it's kind of the only real salt that's that we disagree with, that we don't recommend. It's also kind of sus that usually when you go look in the grocery store for salt, you have like the basic as sea salt, which is quite depleted of minerals and salt everywhere, and the other salt you see everywhere is Himalayan salt. So it's a bit sus that these two clearly inferior salts are the salts that are sold. So you really want to be looking for an online source or like a bougie health shop that sells like Celtic or C90 or Baja Gold, because those have way more minerals and less microplastics and stuff like that, less heavy metals. So yeah.
Now, the interesting thing about the history of salt production is that civilizations around the world figured it out independently from one another. Roughly 8,000 years ago, while people in China's northern province of Shaanxi were collecting salt from Lake Yunchen, people in Bulgaria's Varna region were harvesting salt from springs in Solnitsara, meaning the salt works. In 3000 BCE, ancient Egyptians started gathering salt from marshes along the banks of the Nile, and though they were relatively late to the salt production game, they were among the first to figure out how to use the mineral to cure meats and fish. And
it's something everyone universally found out was valuable and was useful. It's so clear that it's a resource everyone desired, and that's why everyone eventually came to it.
In the Americas, Olmec merchants were already extracting and trading salt along the Gulf Coast as early as 1200 BCE. As civilizations around the world started figuring out salt production, they began to realize the significant roles it played in everyday life. Of course, one of salt's most important uses was for food preservation. It was used to pickle produce and draw bacteria-causing moisture out of meats, which later led to salt-cured delicacies like Italian Parma hams and bresaola, as well as Swedish gravlax and brathering in northern Germany.
Yeah, so salt is a great way to preserve meat. You're going to be drawing out the moisture, you're going to be letting it become older, become aged, which it is inferior to fresh meat, but it's a great way to preserve the product. A thing about dehydrated products though, as you're going to, of course, remove the water content, and if you're going to be consuming these, you will need to consume additional plain water or less salty water to compensate for the amount of sodium you're taking in. Because not only will you be consuming a product which has the water removed, it will have salt added. So be sure if you're consuming a lot of dry products like dry cheeses, dried meats, to be consuming enough plasma along with it.
Salt was used for medicinal purposes as well. Pliny the Elder, author of what is considered by many historians as the world's first encyclopedia, Natural History, wrote that salt was used to soothe the belly after childbirth, cure wounds in the eyes of cattle, and help remove wrinkles.
Clearly, it is useful even for almost everything, because a baby is literally in a plasma bath when it's in the abdomen of a woman, and
cure wounds in the
you
eyes of
know, curing wounds, of course, the hydration helps cure anything.
cattle and help remove wrinkles.
Wrinkles, it hydrates the skin.
Greek physicians mixed salt into medicines for digestive disorders, ointments to disinfect sores, and prescribed salt for sciatica, tuberculosis, and migraine headaches. The Mayans mixed
Migraine headache is a big one. People who are dehydrated get headaches.
salt with marjoram and tree leaves for birth control, and even mixed salt with honey to reduce pain during childbirth. Salt even made its way into religious practices across many cultures. It was used in ancient Egypt's mummification rituals, used to protect against evil spirits from Asia to Africa, was considered an offering to the gods in ancient Greece and Rome, and in North America, salt deities appear in the Navajo, Hopi, and Zuni traditions. As cultures caught on to the many seemingly magical uses for salt, it became the economic foundation for several empires. The Chinese were among the first to seize control over salt, building the first ever state-controlled monopoly in 700 BCE. Historians believe that the tax revenue collected from salt helped pay for the Great Wall of China, as well as troops to defend against nomadic tribes like the Xiongnu, Mongols, and Jurchens. Between the 3rd and 5th centuries, salt accounted for 80 to 90% of state revenues in some of China's kingdoms. And when Marco Polo visited salt production sites in Yunnan province in the 13th century, he said that people in the mountainous regions, quote, have none of the Great Khan's paper money, but use salt instead.
It was so valuable to them, they actually used it as the currency. And it's arguably a way more way more logical currency than stuff like the paper money you have nowadays, because it actually has value. It's like giving each other cattle, giving each other wheat, giving each other anything of value that they can eat. But they use salt, which makes sense. It works as an economical. Everyone needs it. It has a distinct value, and it's a good currency. I could see that. Yeah.
For over 2,000 years, the only company
A currency that actually can be used of itself.
allowed to sell table salt in mainland China was the China National Salt Industry Corporation, also known as China Salt. The salt monopoly finally ended in 2017. The Chinese weren't the only ones to use salt as money. In 525 BCE, the Empire of Aksum, which is Ethiopia today, used salt bars called amoles as payment.
Yeah, especially in the warmer countries where hydration is going to be more important, especially in deserts. You're going to have the oasis, which might have, if you have like a small oasis somewhere, it might have some mineral-rich water. But salt was so much more valuable because people are going to be dehydrated by the warm weather, by the sun. They're going to sweat a lot to cool off, and you're going to need that salt, especially if you're working like slaves. They would need a lot of salt to keep going. Like, it would have just so much more value. I understand they made bars of it, like, makes total sense.
Practice that carried on all the way to the early 20th century. Moorish merchants in the Sub-Sahara traded salt ounce for gold during the 6th century CE. And when
You can clear the Sub-Sahara and the deserts, it's especially in the warmer countries where sodium, like hydration is more important. Like you could see, it's just so much, they value it so much.
Hernan Cortez first arrived to the Yucatan Peninsula, he documented that the Mayans had a well-established salt industry that included extracting salt from plants, which would be used as currency. Salt was also crucial to ancient Rome's economy and has left a lasting impression on cultures across Europe today. Of all the Roman roads that crossed through Europe, Via Salaria, the Salt Road, was among the busiest, and parts
Solaria, the salt road, huh? Solaria, that might mean sun, and that means salt. Still, salt and sun? Those are two things that are both good for you. Very interesting.
of it are still in use to this day. The word salary comes from salarium, which referred to the monthly payment Roman soldiers would receive, part of which was salt. In fact, sal, the Latin word for salt, still pops up in Romantic languages. Sal is the word for salt in Spanish. When it's payday in Spain, you're paid your salario. And same goes for the French language. You get a salaire. So the next time you reach for the salt shaker, take a moment to appreciate the surprising stories behind how this essential ingredient changed the world. They're stories that stretch back millennia and are deeply intertwined with those of humanity itself. What other everyday ingredient would you like us to explore? Let us know in the comments.
Very enjoyable and informative video about salt. I hope you guys enjoyed, and see you for the next one, guys. Drink your plasma.